Shock, profound sorrow, and deep reflection are the emotions that washed over me after researching and learning about more than 100 Black public figures connected to the most tragic and shocking passages in the history of entertainment and civil rights. Hello everyone, we are Our Memory Vault, and this is the video 35 Black celebrities whose tragic passings shocked the world. This deeply impacts how we view the harsh price of the spotlight, the fragility of human life, and the cruel hidden corners of fate, and it might just leave you stunned. This video is perfect to play while you are resting, enjoying a meal with your family, or doing chores around the house. All the information in this video has been carefully researched and gathered from multiple sources. If there are any oversights, please leave a comment below to help our channel continue to grow. Please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and ring the notification bell to receive updates on our latest videos. Now let us step right into the stories of our first figures. Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson was not just a singer, he was the greatest cultural phenomenon that modern music has ever produced. From his magical moonwalk steps to the masterpieces that reshaped the entire music industry, like Thriller and Billie Jean, Michael broke down all racial barriers and elevated Black artistry to a position of absolute supremacy. He possessed a massive fortune, billions of fans across the planet, and seemingly endless adulation. Yet, from the perspective of the psychology of fame, I believe that the higher one stands, the easier it is to be enveloped by coldness and isolation. Behind the dazzling stage lights was a deeply wounded soul, drained by baseless lawsuits, the ruthless scrutiny of the tabloid press, and immense financial pressures. To stand firm against the expectations of the whole world, Michael traded his own physical and mental health. His reliance on highly potent sleep aids just to find a normal night's rest is a heartbreaking testament to the price of fame. It is truly ironic that a man who used music to soothe and bring joy to millions of hearts could not find peace for his own sleep. The event of Michael Jackson's sudden passing in June 2009, due to acute medication toxicity, created an unprecedented shockwave, crashing the entire global internet system for hours. At the age of 50, the king of pop departed this world in a quiet room, closing a brilliant life that was also fraught with injustice and betrayal. For the audiences who grew up with his music, this loss was not merely the passing of an artist, but the collapse of a piece of childhood memory. Michael Jackson left behind a profound lesson. Ultimate fame can sometimes be the cruelest gilded cage that imprisons a human life. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was not an entertainment star, but he was one of the greatest and most influential icons in human history. Through his philosophy of nonviolent struggle and his historic "I Have a Dream" speech, he became a guiding lighthouse for the civil rights movement in America. He bravely confronted a harsh system of racial segregation with love and righteousness, without swords or firearms. But when you choose to stand up to challenge dark forces and deeply rooted injustice, you simultaneously put your life at risk. Let us reflect on the power of ideals through the lens of history. I believe that Dr. King was always acutely aware of the danger lurking around him. In the speeches near the end of his life, he often spoke about how he might not get to the mountaintop with his brothers and sisters. That calmness was not a surrender, but the acceptance of a great sacrifice by a martyr. And the worst did happen on the afternoon of April 4th, 1968, on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis. A cowardly act of violence forever took his voice at the age of 39, an age when his intellect and dedication were at their absolute peak. For older audiences, those who witnessed or felt the boiling atmosphere of the 1960s, the passing of Martin Luther King Jr. is a deep wound in the heart of America. Though the perpetrators succeeded in ending a physical life, they completely failed in killing an ideal. His death ignited a flame that burned brighter than ever, pushing historic civil rights legislation to be passed. Dr. King's story affirms an immortal truth. A bullet can pierce the heart of a hero, but no weapon can ever pierce a great dream that has taken root in the conscience of humanity. Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant is a name that transcends the boundaries of basketball. Possessing 5 NBA championships and countless unprecedented records, he was the absolute symbol of relentless effort, something the world respectfully calls the Mamba mentality. Kobe inspired not only with last-second shots, but with his disciplined, grueling work ethic and an intense desire to win that bordered on obsession. After retiring instead of basking in past glories, Kobe devoted all his time to being an exemplary father, passing down his love for sports to his young daughter Gianna, and investing in the younger generation. He was entering the most beautiful years of a new chapter in his life. From the perspective of the impermanence of fate, Kobe Bryant's tragedy is one of the most shocking and difficult events to accept in the modern era. We always tend to believe that those who possess extraordinary physical strength, an iron will, and massive wealth will always have the ability to master their own destiny. Yet on a heavily fogged morning on January 26, 2020 in California, a tragic helicopter accident shattered all those illusions. It took the lives of Kobe, his daughter Gianna, and 7 others in a way that was too sudden and cruel. This event made the whole world feel as if it stopped turning. Millions could not hold back their tears, not only out of mourning for a sports legend, but out of heartbreak for a father and daughter separated amidst a foggy sky. For us, the passing of Kobe Bryant leaves a profound and painfully realistic lesson. Even if you are a superhuman on the court, even if you plan your future perfectly against the forces of nature and the laws of life and death, humans are still just tiny grains of sand. It reminds us to hold our loved ones tightly every single day because no one knows which goodbye will be the last. Whitney Houston. Whitney Houston was hailed as the Voice, the most noble title to honor a rare vocal talent in human history. With a powerful, resonant, and overflowing soprano voice, she turned "I Will Always Love You" into an eternal love song for all times. In the 80s and 90s, Whitney was the perfect princess of American music, beautiful, talented, brilliantly successful, and always appearing with an elegant image. However, behind the flawless shell, carefully built by the entertainment industry, Whitney's heart had to endure deep fractures from toxic relationships and unspoken pressures. Let us analyze the harshness of fame when lacking a solid foundation. I believe that Whitney's tragedy did not stem from a lack of talent, but from the absence of true psychological protection. When surrounded by the expectations of her family, the public, and swept into a tumultuous marriage, she turned to substances as a temporary escape to numb the pain. The music industry cheered for her when she brought them tens of millions of dollars, but stood powerless and turned their backs when watching that angelic voice slowly being worn away by internal struggles. Whitney's loneliness amidst the glamour is a costly testament to the fickleness of the spotlight. The event of Whitney Houston passing away in February 2012 in a hotel bathtub in Beverly Hills was a profoundly sad ending for a musical monument. For the audiences who grew up with her love songs, this is an indescribable sorrow. At the age of 48, she departed in absolute silence and extreme isolation, leaving behind a massive musical legacy, but also full of regretful low notes. Whitney Houston's story reminds us that behind a radiant smile in public are often incredibly fierce internal battles. Talent can take you to the peak of glory, but only stillness and peace of mind can keep you there. Bob Marley. Bob Marley was not merely a musical artist. He was a philosopher, a missionary, and the representative voice for the oppressed globally. Through rustic, relaxed reggae melodies that contained lyrics with the power of a revolution like Redemption Song or No Woman, No Cry, Bob Marley spread the message of peace, unity, and love across all national borders. His music had the ability to heal and mend wounded souls. Yet ironically, a man who possessed the ability to heal the whole world could not heal the very disease quietly devastating his own body. From a medical and faith-based perspective, Bob Marley's tragedy originated from a deeply regrettable underestimation. When he discovered an unhealing wound on his toe, which was a sign of melanoma, he refused surgical amputation due to his strict Rastafari religious beliefs, believing that the human body must be kept intact. I assess that this choice was not ignorance, but absolute steadfastness to personal faith, even if the price to pay was his life. Despite the cancer cells gradually spreading to his brain and internal organs, Bob Marley continued to step onto the stage, using his last bits of strength to raise his voice for peace. He passed away in May 1981 at just 36 years old, leaving infinite mourning for millions of fans. For audiences who always yearn for peace and freedom, the departure of Bob Marley at such a young age is a massive loss for humanity. Though the cruel disease took his life, it completely failed to erase the legacy he left behind. Bob Marley taught us that a person's lifespan is not measured by the number of years they exist, but by the values and ideals they sow into the world. His melodies will forever remain an immortal spiritual medicine for all generations to come. The passing of Bob Marley left an unfillable void in the hearts of peace lovers. But ladies and gentlemen, the tragedy of fame does not stop there. Right up next, we will uncover the stories of the world's top rap superstars, those who fell forever in a tragic barrage of gunfire, right in the middle of the absolute peak of their careers. What injustices still remain buried? Please do not take your eyes off the screen. Tupac Shakur. Tupac Shakur was not merely a rapper. In the eyes of cultural researchers, he was a poet, a street philosopher carrying an extreme sensitivity. Growing up under the education of a mother who was a core member of the Black Panther movement, Tupac possessed a sharp political foundation. His music was the voice representing impoverished lives, social injustices, and the desire of Black people to rise up. However, behind the soul of an artist yearning for change, Tupac was swept into a harsh vortex of gang culture, a world whose consequences even he sometimes could not control. From the psychological perspective of young people who achieve fame too early, Tupac's tragedy is the tear between two extremes. On one side, a compassionate heart wanting to heal the community. On the other, the thug life image that the media and music industry constantly promoted to sell records. I believe that the musical war between the East and West coasts of America at the time was essentially a cruel media play that exploited the impulsiveness of youth for profit. It pushed talented artists into a maze of artificial hatred, only to have them pay the price with real blood and lives. The event of Tupac Shakur passing away in September 1996 in Las Vegas at just 25 years old was a shock that shook the globe. For viewers who are parents, his death brings infinite sorrow for a talent at the most beautiful age of human life. That departure did not just extinguish an intensely burning creative flame, but also left a costly lesson about the fragile boundary between art and harsh reality. Tupac left this world far too soon, but his street poetry and ideologies will forever echo, reminding us of the power of words and the tragic consequences of hatred. Malcolm X. In the historical picture of the American Civil Rights Movement in the 60s, if Martin Luther King Jr. was the symbol of moderation, then Malcolm X was the embodiment of self-respect, pride, and the fierce, uncompromising fighting spirit of Black people. His eloquent, sharp speeches awakened millions of people living in the humiliation of racism. However, the greatest thing about Malcolm X lay not only in his oratorical ability, but in his bravery to change and elevate his own ideology. After his historic pilgrimage to Mecca, his worldview shifted from racial anger to universal brotherhood, calling for the unity of all colors for human progress. Let us analyze the loneliness and the cost of being ahead of one's time. When Malcolm X began spreading the message of tolerance and harmony, he met fierce opposition and betrayal from the very extreme forces he once stood alongside. I assess that Malcolm X's tragedy is the classic tragedy of great men. When your ideology goes far beyond the understanding and localized interests of those around you, you become a target that must be eliminated. He received countless threats, but he never chose to step back or retreat into fear. He still stood tall on the podium for his ideals. On February 21, 1965, at the Audubon Ballroom in New York, the life of this outstanding leader was cowardly taken when he was only 39 years old. For audiences who value history, the death of Malcolm X is an immeasurable loss for humanity. Though the perpetrators took his life, they inadvertently turned him into an immortal symbol of truth and bravery. Malcolm X's story teaches us a profound lesson. The journey to find and protect the truth is always full of thorns, but a life lived fully with faith and integrity will always leave an eternal echo in the heart of history. Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix is a demigod of the world music scene. Through his innate talent and boundless unorthodoxy, he completely redefined how the world listened to and played the electric guitar. Hendrix's performances were not just music. They were a transcendence of sight, sound, and emotion, where he turned the guitar into a living entity, carrying the soul of blues mixed with the frenzy of rock and roll. However, behind the improvisation and explosive energy on stage, Jimi Hendrix was a deeply sensitive soul, always struggling with the massive pressures from public expectations and exhausting tour schedules. Through the lens of the neuropsychology of artists, the passing of Jimi Hendrix is a heartbreaking consequence of an entertainment industry lacking humanity. In the late 60s, the concept of mental health care for artists was virtually non-existent. I believe that Jimi turning to sedatives or all-night parties was not necessarily degeneracy, but the desperate cries for help of an overloaded mind. He was severely sleep-deprived, exhausted from continuous creation, and lonely right in the midst of tens of thousands of fans. People only cared about the music he created, but few cared about the shattering taking place inside his mind. The event of Jimi Hendrix passing away in September 1970 in London at exactly 27 years old cast a dark cloud over the entire music world. For art lovers, the fact that a genius stopped his journey at his most brilliant age is an unending regret. Closing his life in a quiet room, Jimi forever joined the haunting 27 Club of Artists. His story brings a profound reflection on human limits. Behind the magical sounds that captivated the world, there is sometimes the vitality-draining sacrifice of an artist's soul that yearns to be understood but departs in absolute silence. The Notorious B.I.G. Christopher Wallace, respectfully known to the world by his stage name, the Notorious B.I.G., or Biggie, is one of the greatest rap artists of all time. Possessing a distinctively warm voice, a flow as smooth as silk, and the ability to use words with incredible sharpness, Biggie was like a street novelist. His records painted a heartbreakingly realistic picture of hard life in Brooklyn, the desire to change one's fate, and the risks of the underworld. At age 24, he rose from poverty to become the absolute king of East Coast hip-hop. But the crown of fame came with an invisible sentence. Let us analyze the senselessness and cruelty of media wars. Biggie's passing carried the color of a classic tragedy, because it happened a mere 6 months after the death of the man who was once his best friend and later his arch-rival, Tupac Shakur. I assess that the fall of the two greatest talents of a generation in such a short span is an unwashable stain on the entertainment industry of that time. This industry incited a regional war, turning brothers with the same starting point into sworn enemies, so that when the peak of hatred exploded, no one could stop the tragic gunfire. The event of Biggie's sudden passing in March 1997 in Los Angeles was a heavy blow to the hearts of millions of fans. The most heartbreaking part is that at that time he was preparing to release an album titled Life After Death, with the desire to shake off his dark past to head towards a brighter, more positive future for his family and his 2 young children. For mature audiences, the death of the Notorious B.I.G. is the clearest proof of fate's cruelty. When a person finally finds the light and wants to step out of the darkness, that is exactly when the darkness swallows him forever. Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye was the most precious gem of Motown Records. A man who brought the world sweet romantic soul melodies as well as profoundly deep social ideologies. His album What's Going On is a historical masterpiece, an earnest call for peace, love, and empathy between human beings. Marvin's voice was soft and smooth, but carried the weight of a sage. Yet there is an incredibly painful paradox. The man who spent his whole life singing about human peace had to live a life full of torment, agonized by childhood psychological trauma, and a suffocatingly toxic relationship with his own biological father. From the perspective of analyzing family psychology, Marvin Gaye's story is a tragedy with Shakespearean colors. despite being a superstar sought after by millions, bringing a prosperous life to his family. Deep down, Marvin always yearned for genuine recognition and love from his father, a strict and highly conflicted minister. I believe that public glory can never fill the void of trauma originating from within the home. The escalating tension in the family, combined with Marvin's own mental pressures, turned their home into a ticking time bomb. Exactly one day before his 45th birthday in April 1984, the life of the Prince of Soul was ended during a family altercation, and the one who pulled the trigger was none other than the father who gave him life. For audiences who always uphold family values, the end of Marvin Gaye is an emotionally devastating shock. Though he closed his eyes, the haunting question in his lifetime song, "What's Going On?" will forever echo. It is a painful wake-up call that sometimes the deepest wounds and the cruelest tragedies do not come from the world out there, but originate right from the place we call home. The tragedy of Marvin Gaye's family truly leaves a heartbreaking silence that words cannot describe. But ladies and gentlemen, this list still hides other shocking stories. There are great icons who brought the vicious disease of cancer right onto the film set, gritting their teeth through brutal chemotherapy sessions just to complete a lifetime role for the next generation. Whose tear-jerking silent sacrifice is that? Please do not take your eyes off the screen. We will reveal it right now. Chadwick Boseman. Chadwick Boseman was not just a talented Hollywood actor. He was a monumental cultural icon of the 21st century. By brilliantly portraying King T'Challa in the blockbuster Black Panther, he brought the global Black community a true hero, an unparalleled source of pride on the silver screen. His roles always depicted resilient historical figures full of dignity. Yet the world was stunned to realize that this superhero was not only brave on film. Behind his warm smile and poised demeanor at red carpet events, Chadwick was fighting a life-or-death battle in real life all by himself: colon cancer. From the perspective of analyzing the philosophy of human life, the way Chadwick Boseman faced death was the pinnacle of greatness and self-respect. For 4 grueling years, amidst chemotherapy sessions and major surgeries that drained his physical strength, he silently went to film sets, exceptionally completing roles that required extremely high physical intensity without a single word of complaint. I believe that his silence was not hiding a weakness, but an incredibly noble artistic sacrifice. He did not want public pity to overshadow the meaningful messages of his films. He poured all his final vitality into creating a legacy for the young generation of color. The event of Chadwick Boseman passing away in August 2020 at the age of 43 left an unfillable void in the hearts of global audiences. For mature individuals, his life is the perfect definition of the word responsibility. Even knowing his time was counted in days, he did not choose to rest, but chose to dedicate himself until he took his last breath. Chadwick Boseman proved that a true superhero does not need a bulletproof suit. The greatest superpower of a human being is courage, the steadfastness to protect one's dignity, and the desire to leave behind good values before returning to dust. Nat King Cole. Nat King Cole is an exemplary monument of elegance and sophistication. With a baritone voice as smooth as velvet, he turned songs like Unforgettable and Love into immortal love songs. Not only an outstanding artist, he was also a pioneer in breaking down strict racial barriers on American television in the 1950s, becoming the first Black person to host a national television show. On screen, Nat King Cole always appeared in perfectly tailored suits, a gentle smile, and an aristocratic demeanor. Yet behind that perfection, a common habit of the era was quietly sowing a seed of destruction in his body. Let us analyze the tragedy of medical ignorance in the past. During his peak, smoking was promoted by the media as a symbol of charm and masculinity. People even believed it helped make a voice warmer and deeper. Smoking up to 3 packs a day ruthlessly devastated his lungs. I assess that the passing of Nat King Cole carries a heartbreaking tone of irony. The very thing that society at the time mistakenly thought was the spice of art was the thing that took the life of a genius. By the time lung cancer was discovered, it was already far too late. In February 1965, at the age of 45, the gentleman of jazz quietly took his last breath in a hospital room in Santa Monica. For audiences who once immersed themselves in his romantic melodies, watching a robust figure deteriorate rapidly in just a few months was a massive mental shock. The passing of Nat King Cole did not just leave a permanent void in popular music, but was also a harsh wake-up call about protecting one's health. He departed, but his smooth, warm voice will continue to warm lonely souls for many generations to come. Richard Pryor. Richard Pryor is widely recognized as one of the greatest and most influential stand-up comedians of all time. Through his intelligent, sharp words and ability to dissect the most raw, hidden corners of American society, he turned the pains of racism and poverty into roaring laughter. The stage was where he exploded, using all his body language and facial expressions to command the crowd. Yet nature sometimes writes incredibly ironic scripts. The man possessing that explosive energy was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, a cruel autoimmune disease that slowly robbed him of the ability to control his muscles and voice. From the psychological perspective of an artist, having to witness your own body betraying you is the ultimate torture. For a comedian, voice and agile movement are the sole weapons for survival. I believe that Richard Pryor's greatness lay not only in prestigious awards, but in his pride when facing severe illness. In his final years, despite being bound to a wheelchair and having difficulty articulating, he did not let public pity cloud his personality. He even used his own disease as material for satire, using laughter to mock the harshness of fate. The event of Richard Pryor passing away in 2005 at the age of 65, following consecutive heart attacks due to complications from his illness, was the end of a comedy era. For our older audience who always value bravery, his legacy carries immeasurable weight. He lived a life full of mistakes, stumbles, and physical wounds, but above all, he was a warrior who never bowed his head. Richard Pryor taught us that the greatest strength of a human being lies in a sharp mind and a free spirit, even if the body is imprisoned in the harshest of limitations. Sammy Davis Jr. Sammy Davis Jr. was a rare artistic phenomenon, an outstanding talent who could sing, dance, act, and play multiple instruments with an incredibly captivating demeanor. As a prominent member of the legendary Rat Pack alongside Frank Sinatra, he conquered the most lavish stages in America, breaking countless racial barriers in the entertainment industry. Wherever Sammy appeared, there was the transcendence of art and endless applause. However, behind the constant smile and dazzling halo, his life was a series of financial insecurities and the cruel devastation of throat cancer. Let us analyze the trap of fame and the dark side of Hollywood. An artist who dedicated his whole life to entertaining the public, earning tens of millions of dollars, yet in his final years had to face the threat of bankruptcy. I assess that the tragedy of Sammy Davis Jr. was the consequence of a lifestyle straining to maintain an image of luxury, coupled with the lack of conscientious financial managers. When cancer took his voice, his only tool for making money, he fell into massive debt with the IRS. The priceless memorabilia of a lifetime of dedication were slowly auctioned off to cover medical expenses. In May 1990, at the age of 64, Sammy Davis Jr. passed away in a mansion that had become empty and quiet. For audiences who once admired his masterful tap dance moves, this is an incredibly bitter end. A man who spent his youth standing amidst the adulation of tens of thousands ultimately departed in exhaustion and material anxiety. Sammy's story is a profound warning about the impermanence of fame. The applause will eventually fade, the stage lights will eventually dim, and the only thing protecting us in the storms of life is not fame, but alertness and planning our own future. XXXTentacion. To conclude this section of the list, let us look back at a contemporary story that reflects the dark corners of street culture and the unfulfilled promise of youth. The passing of rap singer XXXTentacion. Despite a private life filled with controversies and serious mistakes, no one can deny this young man's innate musical talent. His music was a unique blend of hip-hop, rock, and R&B, touching the deepest corners of depression and loneliness that modern youth are facing. He was the representative voice for a generation struggling to find understanding and yearning to be healed. Through the lens of analyzing the cycle of violence, the tragedy of XXXTentacion is an agonizing wake-up call. Right before his death, the young singer was making efforts to implement positive changes, participating in charity work, trying to shake off his dark past, and heading towards a better future. I believe that the cruelty of the streets lies in the fact that it rarely gives a person a second chance to rebuild their life. On a June afternoon in 2018, just after stepping out of a motorcycle dealership in Florida, the 20-year-old had his life taken in an armed robbery. For parents, this event brings indescribable sorrow, not only for the loss of a talent, but for the waste of a life that was on the path to goodness. XXXTentacion's death shatters the illusion that wealth or fame can become a shield protecting a person from the temptations and risks of a complex society. He departed while his songs were still unfinished, leaving a heart-wrenching pain for his family and millions of fans. The story of this young artist painfully reminds us that life is incredibly short, and sometimes the price paid for toxic environments is a trade-off with an entire future that never got the chance to bloom. Aaliyah was dubbed the Princess of R&B, an icon of rare beauty and talent, who reshaped the sound of an entire decade. With a sweet, soaring voice and an edgy yet incredibly glamorous streetwear fashion style, she was not just a singer, but also a muse of Hollywood cinema. Her career was a perfect upward trajectory, where innate talent met relentless effort. Yet just as the whole world was rolling out the red carpet, waiting for her to step onto the true throne of entertainment, a cruel fate suddenly halted everything in August 2001. Let us analyze the cruelty of the boundary between life and death and the pressure of a harsh work schedule. The fact that a music production crew had to rush onto a small plane overloaded past its permissible weight limit just to meet a work deadline is a sad reality of the entertainment industry. I believe that the plane crash in the Bahamas that took Aaliyah's life at age 22 was not merely a traffic accident. It was a costly lesson paid for with blood and tears about ensuring occupational safety for artists who frequently have to work to exhaustion under the time pressures of record labels. For the audiences who were once infatuated with that angelic voice, the event of Aaliyah remaining forever in her most brilliant youth is an infinite mourning. She departed, leaving behind an unfinished movie, a newly released album, and countless dreams that never got to take shape. However, as time passes, Aaliyah's legacy proves its fierce vitality. Her hit songs continue to inspire a slew of contemporary young artists. The story of the R&B princess reminds us of a heartbreaking truth. There are stars born not to shine forever in the sky, but to streak across the night, leaving a breathtakingly beautiful trail of light that makes humanity miss them for eternity. Luther Vandross. When mentioning romantic music, it is impossible not to mention Luther Vandross. Possessing a velvet-smooth baritone voice, masterful vocal technique, and the ability to convey soul-stirring emotions, he was the king of love songs. Songs like Never Too Much or Dance with My Father became the soundtrack for millions of love stories and sacred family moments worldwide. Luther seemed born to use his voice to heal broken hearts and honor the most beautiful emotional values. Yet behind the man who brought sweetness to the whole world was a persistent and agonizing battle with his own health. From the perspective of preventive medical analysis, the life of Luther Vandross is a stern warning about lifestyle and modern diseases. For decades, he struggled with obesity, diabetes, and high blood pressure, the silent killers that are often overlooked in the busy daily grind of adults. I believe that the loneliness of the artist once again manifested clearly. Even with tens of thousands of cheering fans around, when the velvet curtain closed, Luther had to face nerve-damaging complications all by himself. The horrific stroke in 2003 robbed him of his most precious assets, his voice and the ability to control his body. In July 2005, after 2 years of bravely battling the lingering effects in silence, Luther Vandross peacefully bid farewell to this world at the age of 54. For our older audience, especially those who used his music for their first dance on their wedding day, This loss truly left a gaping void in the soul. Luther dedicated his entire life to singing about love, but ironically his body was not healthy enough to fully enjoy a peaceful life. His legacy is not only the priceless recording tapes, but also a reminder for us to appreciate and preserve our health, the only foundation upon which we can love others. Sam Cooke. Sam Cooke is not only honored as the father of soul music, but he was also a brilliant businessman, an icon of elegance, and a resounding voice in the civil rights movement. His masterpiece, A Change Is Gonna Come, became an immortal anthem for the Black desire for freedom, in an era where Black artists were often exploited. Sam Cooke founded his own record label and publishing company, holding his own music copyrights to assert an independent position. He was the perfect model of an intellectual, talented gentleman carrying a vision ahead of his time. However, the end of a great life sometimes carries details that are absurd and cruel to an unbelievable degree. Let us analyze the harsh contrast between the light of his legacy and the darkness of his death. On a cold night in December 1964, Sam Cooke was found passed away in a rundown motel in Los Angeles due to a gunshot from the motel manager in an incredibly chaotic and conflicting circumstance. I assess that the greatest pain for his family and millions of fans is not just losing a talent at the age of 33, but the insult to his dignity through the vague testimonies from unreliable witnesses. A gentleman who always lived in dignity had to fall in a place entirely unworthy of him. For those who love music history, the death of Sam Cooke remains to this day one of the greatest mysteries, with many theories suggesting this was a staged conspiracy to eliminate a civil rights voice that held too much influence. Whether the truth is buried under the dust of time or not, Sam Cooke's great legacy will never be tainted. His tragic passing teaches us a sorrowful lesson. Society can use darkness to end a life, but can never extinguish the light of the noble ideals that life dedicated to humanity. John Coltrane. In the sacred realm of jazz, John Coltrane is revered as a saint. The saxophone in his hands was not just an instrument. It was his vehicle to communicate with the universe, a tool to purify his soul and reach towards the Supreme Being. His masterpiece, A Love Supreme, is a deep spiritual journey, a word of gratitude sent to the Creator after he had single-handedly overcome the darkness of addiction. Coltrane played the saxophone with fierce intensity, complex notes rushing like storms of the mind, yearning to touch absolute enlightenment. Yet on the path to the eternity of art, his mortal body had to face cruel devastation from liver cancer. Let us analyze the ultimate sacrifice of a true artist. Knowing he had a vicious cancer, instead of being hospitalized to prolong his life with painful and hopeless chemotherapy treatments, John Coltrane chose a path full of pride and philosophical depth. He kept his medical condition a secret from the whole world, refusing to be bedridden so he could continue touring, continue playing the saxophone, and recording his final music projects. I believe that this decision was not stubbornness, but a transcendent act. He used his very last drops of vitality draining from his body to complete his musical legacy, fully dedicating himself to the art he worshipped. In July 1967, at the age of 40, the Grand Master of Jazz took his last breath, leaving the entire music world in utter shock, as no one knew he had been gravely ill beforehand. For audiences who once found peace in his music, Coltrane's death carries an endlessly epic meaning. He departed, but his life-filled sounds continue to echo forever. John Coltrane's story is an eloquent testament to the power of ultimate dedication. When music becomes a faith, the artist is ready to smile and embrace death because they know their soul has been immortalized in every note left behind for the world. Otis Redding. Otis Redding possessed a voice akin to the storms of the American South. Raw, fierce, surging with emotion and holding the power to pierce through any barrier. Dubbed the King of Soul, he was one of the rare black artists of the time, with the ability to conquer white audiences as well, especially after his historically explosive performance at the Monterey Pop Festival in 1967. Otis was at the peak of his form, his career like a rocket launching straight into the orbit of the greatest legends. He had just finished writing and recording a completely new-sounding song, Sitting on the Dock of the Bay, marking a major turning point in his artistic thinking. But tragically, that would be the final work he left for the world. Through the lens of the irony of fate, the tragedy that occurred on the afternoon of December 10, 1967, is one of the coldest cuts in music history. The plane carrying Otis and his band crashed into the freezing Lake Monona in heavy fog conditions. I assess that the ultimate sorrow lies not only in us losing a talent at 26, the age when creativity is flowing most strongly, but also in the unfinished nature of a new era that had just begun to open. Otis never got the chance to see the public's reaction to his change in musical style. His life was taken right on the threshold of absolute greatness. The event of the airplane carrying those dreams, sinking into the cold lake, broke millions of hearts. A few months after his passing, Sitting on the Dock of the Bay was released and instantly rose to the #1 spot on the charts, becoming the first posthumous #1 single in American music history. For older audiences, listening to this song again always brings a choking, indescribably lingering feeling. Otis Redding sang about a man sitting quietly by the dock, watching time drift away into nowhere. It is like a sad prophecy, a musical will that the short-lived singer quietly left behind for the mortal world before stepping into eternity. Charlie Parker. Charlie Parker, respectfully known by aficionados as Bird, was one of the greatest saxophone artists music has ever produced. Along with his peers, he created the bebop movement, a complex jazz style requiring masterful individual technique and the ability to improvise at terrifying speeds. Charlie's mind always seemed to run ahead of its time. The melodies pouring from his horn contained an absolute freedom, breaking all traditional musical structural norms. But accompanying an innate intellect was always a soul highly vulnerable to the harshness of the real world. Through the lens of analyzing the price of genius, Charlie Parker's life is a heartbreaking testament to how art can drain a person's vitality. Having to constantly create, constantly perform in stuffy nightclubs for cheap pay pushed him into deep psychological crises. I assess that Charlie turning to addictive substances and alcohol was not the impulsiveness of a weak-willed person, but a desperate effort to soothe the storms of thought that never ceased in his head, as well as to escape the pressure of a society still heavily burdened by racial prejudice at the time. In March 1955, Charlie Parker passed away in a New York apartment when he was only 34 years old. Physical exhaustion due to a destructive lifestyle caused the examining coroner to mistakenly believe he was a man in his 60s. For audiences passionate about the improvisation of jazz, his death is the most sorrowful low note. He used his own life and youth as fuel, lighting up a brilliant era for music. Though the little bird stopped flying, his immortal bebop melodies will forever soar freely in the artistic sky, never bound by any limits. Bernie Mac. Bernie Mac was one of the most outstanding comedians in America. A man who possessed a charming, bold storytelling style and the ultimate ability to command the stage. The stand-up comedy shows and the television series bearing his name became indispensable spiritual food, bringing positive energy and hearty laughs to millions of families globally. Standing under the flashing lights, Bernie always appeared as an articulate, vibrant, and incredibly proud man. Yet behind the tens of thousands of smiles he generously bestowed upon the audience, he himself was silently gritting his teeth through a fierce battle for his life with sarcoidosis, which was ravaging his respiratory system. Let us reflect on the noble sacrifice of those whose mission is to bring joy. To stand on a comedy stage and deliver words at a continuous pace, an artist needs incredibly healthy lungs. Yet the granuloma disease ruthlessly robbed Bernie of that precious flow of oxygen. I highly admire his resilience to the point of stubbornness. Instead of publicizing his illness to receive public pity or finding an excuse to rest, he chose to hide the pain. Every performance for him was a true battle between an iron will and a body slowly running out of oxygen. He would rather endure chest cramps backstage than ever let a cough interrupt the audience's joy. In August 2008, Bernie Mac passed away at age 50 due to complications from pneumonia. This event created a deep wave of mourning. For mature audiences, Bernie Mac's legacy carries an immense humanistic value. He taught us a poignant lesson about dedication. The joy we receive is sometimes traded for the most deeply hidden pains of others. Though his respiratory system failed, Bernie Mac's optimistic spirit and legacy of laughter will forever breathe rhythmically in the hearts of those left behind. Lisa "Left Eye" Lopes. In the golden era of 90s R&B music, the girl group TLC created a global earthquake, and Lisa "Left Eye" Lopes was the creative soul, the most explosive flame of the group. Not only possessing sharp, edgy rap verses, Lisa was also the one behind groundbreaking visual ideas, shaping the style for an entire generation of youth. In contrast to her petite stature, she carried a massive energy source, a strong personality, and was never afraid to break out of preset molds. However, behind her brilliant success and rebellious image, Lisa was a girl constantly pondering the meaning of life and endlessly yearning to find peace for her soul. Through the lens of analyzing the need for psychological healing, Lisa's decision to temporarily step away from the Hollywood halo was an incredibly brave act. Right when her career was at its peak, she realized that money and fame could not fill the voids and traumas inside her. She sought out the country of Honduras as a sanctuary to purify her body, participate in spiritual retreats, and return to pristine nature. I believe that Lisa's desire to be reborn reflects a common pain of many young stars. They succeed in conquering the world, but face difficulty in finding balance within their own inner selves. It is truly ironic and cruel that fate struck a fatal blow right at the place where Lisa believed she would be healed. A tragic car accident in Honduras in April 2002 forever took the life of the talented rapper at the age of 30. For the audiences who were once infatuated with the melody of waterfalls, this loss leaves a lingering silence. The passing of Lisa "Left Eye" Lopes is a tragedy of the unfinished, reminding us of the ultimate fragility of human life. She left this world when her journey to find peace had just begun, but her flame of passion and artistic personality will forever shine in the musical sky. Nipsey Hussle. Nipsey Hussle was not merely a Grammy-nominated rap artist. For the South Los Angeles community, he was a leader, a social activist, and a symbol of hope. Rising from an environment full of violence and street gangs, Nipsey used his intellect and musical talent to build a legitimate business empire. The greatest thing about him was his philosophy. The marathon continues. Once he became wealthy, instead of moving to luxurious gated communities to enjoy it, he chose to return and invest in the very impoverished neighborhood where he was born, creating jobs for local youth and striving to mend the community's fractures. Let us analyze the ultimate tragedy of those who dare to be heroes in the underworld. Striving to change the mindset of a community already accustomed to violence and hatred is a life-threatening task. I assess that Nipsey understood the risks when he tried to pull young people out of the shadows of gangs, but he remained determined to do it out of love for his people. The cruelty of the streets lies in the fact that sometimes the very people you want to save become the ones pointing a gun at you. Jealousy and petty conflicts clouded reason, extinguishing the brightest torch of the neighborhood. On the afternoon of March 31st, 2019, Nipsey Hussle had his life taken right in front of the Marathon clothing store that he founded himself. This event shocked the entire United States, leaving an indescribable sorrow for audiences who value community service. He fell on the very land he worked so hard to revive. The death of Nipsey Hussle is a painful testament to the price of spreading light in a dark place. However, his passing is not the end. His great legacy and vision have become an endless source of inspiration, urging millions of young people of color to continue standing up to run the unfinished marathon. Florence Griffith Joyner, FloJo. Florence Griffith Joyner, affectionately known to the world as FloJo, was a unique phenomenon in global athletics. She was the fastest woman on the planet, the owner of Olympic records in the 100 meters and 200 meters that decades later, no one has been able to break. Not only possessing wind-splitting speed, FloJo also brought a brilliant unconventional fashion style to the track with her one-legged racing suits, flowing hair, and meticulously painted long nails. She completely redefined the image of an athlete, strong and powerful, yet incredibly glamorous and profoundly feminine. FloJo's body seemed to be the absolute pinnacle of human physical perfection, however under the lens of nature's impermanence. FloJo's story proves that no perfection can conquer the harsh laws of life and death. Behind the rippling muscles and sprinting strides like a cheetah, her body harbored a silent neurological condition. I believe that the greatest contrast in FloJo's life is that a woman who had the ability to master every movement of her body at the highest speeds was ultimately completely helpless and lost control in her own sleep. It reminds us that human life, no matter how sharply forged, always hangs by an incredibly fragile thread. In September 1998, America's goddess of speed suddenly passed away in her sleep due to an epileptic seizure when she was only 38 years old. To the audiences who once proudly cheered for her victories on the international stage, this unannounced departure was an indescribable shock. FloJo retired from the track of life, too quietly, completely contradicting the roaring cheers in the stadium years ago. The cruel curve of fate took her away, but the image of an impeccably talented and beautiful female athlete tearing through the finish line ribbon with a radiant smile will forever remain an immortal symbol in the hearts of sports fans. Gary Coleman. Gary Coleman was once one of the most explosive television phenomena in America during the 70s and 80s. With chubby cheeks, bright eyes, and the classic catchphrase, "What you talking about, Willis in the show?" Different strokes, the boy stole the hearts of millions of viewers and became the highest-paid child star in Hollywood at the time. However, behind the innocent smile that captivated an entire generation, Gary carried a profoundly cruel medical tragedy. A brutal congenital kidney disease completely halted his physical development, locking this talented artist in the body of a child, even as the years relentlessly passed by. Let us analyze the cruelty of the entertainment industry and the terrible psychological pressures Gary had to bear. When the show ended and he entered adulthood, Hollywood quickly turned its back on him. Society only loved a funny Gary on screen, refusing to accept an adult man with a childlike stature. I believe that Gary's greatest suffering did not only come from risky kidney transplant surgeries, but from the betrayal of those closest to him as his adoptive parents and manager drained the multi-million-dollar fortune he had traded his entire childhood to earn. In May 2010, Gary Coleman passed away at the age of 42, following an accidental fall in his home, closing a life full of trauma and inner turmoil. For the audiences who grew up with Gary's laughter, his end leaves an ultimate bitterness. He lived a life forcing himself to please the world, but rarely received true protection and empathy for his own personal storms. Gary Coleman's story is a heartbreaking indictment of the fragile line between glory and oblivion, reminding us of the exorbitant prices child stars must pay for public adulation. Isaac Hayes. Isaac Hayes is a towering icon of soul and funk music. A multi-talented artist who rewrote history by becoming the first African American to win the Academy Award for Best Original Song with the classic theme from Shaft. Possessing a deep, warm, profoundly iconic baritone voice, along with a majestic appearance, a shaved head, and lavish outfits, Isaac was like a powerful king on stage. His music was the perfect blend of romance, captivating rhythms, and deep social messages. He broke down artistic barriers, paving the way for Black artists to express their pride and unique identity, from the perspective of the will to survive and impermanence. The final chapter of Isaac Hayes' life brings admiration mixed with sorrow. After suffering a severe stroke in 2006, he made an extraordinary effort to exercise, rehabilitate, and bravely return to perform on stage. I highly appreciate his warrior spirit. Instead of surrendering to age and illness, he chose to live a disciplined life, exercising regularly to regain control of his body. However, human effort sometimes still must bow to the harsh laws of nature. The once robust body, no matter how carefully tended, carries within it fragile limits that cannot be foreseen. In August 2008, Isaac Hayes passed away at the age of 65 due to a medical episode right in the gym of his own home. His passing while trying to maintain his health is a heartbreaking irony. For lovers of 70s music, this loss left a gaping void in the artistic sky. Isaac Hayes fully dedicated a lifetime to art and relentlessly fought until his final days. His passing reminds us that life is a piece of music full of unexpected highs and lows, and the most important thing is how proudly we sang that music while we were still alive. Don Cornelius. Don Cornelius was not a singer or actor, but he was one of the greatest architects of African American pop culture. As the creator and legendary host of Soul Train, he brought a revolution to national television. Soul Train was not just a music show. It was a sanctuary celebrating the beauty, fashion style, dance, and identity of Black people for decades. With a warm baritone voice, a poised demeanor, and his classic sign-off, "Love, Peace, and Soul," Don Cornelius lit up millions of living rooms, every weekend becoming an irreplaceable cultural bridge. Let us analyze the tragic contrast between the light he brought to the world and the darkness that enveloped his inner self. A man who spent his youth creating joy, pride, and connection for millions had to spend his final years in absolute isolation and pain. I assess that physical health issues, including brain surgeries and prolonged neurological complications, gradually wore down his resilient will. When the chronic pain exceeded his tolerance threshold, combined with crises in his personal life, depression became an invisible enemy, slowly enveloping the mind of the master creator. On an early morning in February 2012, at the age of 75, Don Cornelius ended his own life in a deeply sorrowful decision. For the countless viewers who once danced to the rhythm of Soul Train, this event was a heavy mental shock. It exposed a painful truth. Illness and mental breakdown in the twilight years can defeat even the strongest monuments. Don Cornelius's legacy will always be a brilliant part of music history, but his passing is also a profound reminder of the importance of caring for, sharing with, and supporting the mental health of the older adults around us. Fred Hampton. Fred Hampton did not belong to the Hollywood entertainment world, but his name and legacy have a profound impact equal to any superstar. As a young, charismatic, and intellectual leader of the Black Panther movement in Chicago, Fred Hampton possessed outstanding oratorical skills and a sharp political mind far beyond his early 20s. His greatest achievement did not lie in slogans, but in his ability to build peace. He succeeded in persuading street gangs to a truce and simultaneously founded the Rainbow Coalition, uniting working-class Black, white, and Hispanic communities to stand together against poverty and social injustice. Through the lens of the historical process, the maturity and unifying vision of a young man who had just turned 21 became a massive threat to the forces that wished to maintain division. I believe that the tragedy of Fred Hampton is the classic tragedy of those who dare to step ahead of their time, dare to fight for the justice of the vulnerable. The brilliance of his intellect and humanitarian ideologies blinded harsh prejudices. Instead of being protected and given conditions to develop into an outstanding leader of the country, that brilliant torch of youth was cruelly extinguished by systematic acts of suppression. On a pre-dawn morning in December 1969, Fred Hampton's life was permanently stopped in a highly controversial raid, right as he was deep in sleep. To the audiences following civil rights history, this event is one of the deepest and most painful wounds. He departed when his life and noble ideals had just begun to bloom. However, even if the physical body is destroyed, Fred Hampton's spirit and message of unity among races live on forever. His sacrifice passed the flame of courage to countless succeeding generations, proving that ideas for humanity will always endure. Donny Hathaway. In the temple of soul and R&B music, Donny Hathaway is hailed as one of the most expressive, profound, and moving male vocalists. Outstanding solo songs like A Song for You or legendary duets with Roberta Flack elevated his name to the pinnacle of glory. Donny's music was not merely notes. It was the pouring out of his heart, choked sobs, and deep empathy with the pains of humanity. He sang as if pouring his entire soul into every word. Yet the most heartbreaking thing is that a soul, possessing the ultimate ability for empathy and artistic sensitivity, is often the most vulnerable soul to the storms of the mind. Let us analyze the tear between genius and invisible mental illnesses. Behind the stage lights and prestigious Grammy Awards, Donny Hathaway had to endure an incredibly fierce internal battle with severe depression and paranoid schizophrenia. I assess that in the 1970s, society's awareness of mental health was still very limited, leading to artists like him having to face the demons inside alone without proper medical and psychological intervention. Music was both a remedy for salvation, but sometimes hallucinations and mental breakdown pushed him into dark, inescapable abysses. On an evening in January 1979, at the age of 33, that melancholic soul could no longer hold on and chose to leave this world at a hotel in New York. To the millions of audiences who loved his melodies, this sudden farewell is an elegy that leaves an unending ache. This event is a sorrowful wake-up call about the fragile boundary between artistic transcendence and psychological impasse. Donny Hathaway departed, but his highly healing voice will continue to embrace and comfort hearts struggling in the storms of life, forever unfading. Dinah Washington. Dinah Washington is honored by the world as the Queen of the Blues, a powerful, sharp voice carrying an unmistakable personal mark. With the masterful ability to handle everything from blues and R&B to pop, she left behind immortal records like What a Difference a Day Makes. On stage, Dinah was the embodiment of power, glamour, and the confident demeanor of a top star. Yet behind the bright flashing lights and applause, this legendary singer was a victim of one of the cruelest traps in the entertainment industry: the pressure to maintain a perfect physical appearance according to strict societal standards. Let us analyze the psychological hidden corner of a woman under the pressure of fame. Despite possessing a God-given voice, Dinah always harbored insecurities about her figure. In a desperate effort to maintain a slim image in the eyes of the public, she had to rely on diet pills combined with sedatives to sustain her packed work schedule. I believe that Dinah's true pain did not come from vocal critiques, but from a society that always placed more weight on outward appearance than on genuine artistic values. She locked herself in a vicious cycle of pills, only to have her body slowly drained by those very illusory expectations. On a day in mid-December 1963, at the age of 39, the Queen of the Blues quietly passed away due to complications from an accidental drug interaction. To the audiences who were once captivated by her voice, this sudden departure leaves an infinite sorrow. This event is a cold, sharp warning about toxic beauty standards that can destroy human lives. Dinah Washington departed, but her proud voice and sad story will forever be a costly lesson, reminding us that true beauty must stem from health and peace in the soul, not from pills that deceive the eyes. Eddie Kendricks. When mentioning the golden era of Motown Records, it is impossible to overlook the legendary group, the Temptations, and the soul that created the softness and soaring quality of the group was Eddie Kendricks. Possessing a soaring, ethereal falsetto voice that moved like an angel, he breathed life into immortal songs like Just My Imagination. Eddie Kendricks on stage always exuded charm, masterful dance steps, and an intense magnetism that captivated countless audience hearts. Yet just like many great artists of his time, his life was cut short by a deadly habit condoned by the very cultural context of the 60s and 70s. Through the lens of medicine and the irony of fate, Eddie Kendricks' tragedy is an unending regret. For decades, smoking was viewed as an indispensable part of an artist's lifestyle, a habit promoted by the media without fully imagining its devastating consequences. I assess that there is a choking sorrow when his most precious weapon, the lungs and vocal cords to create those magnificent high notes, was inadvertently destroyed by himself over the years. When lung cancer came knocking, it not only took away his ability to sing, but slowly drained the vitality of this talented artist. In October 1992, Eddie Kendricks passed away at the age of 52 after a long period of bravely battling his illness. For older audiences who once danced to the background music of The Temptations, his departure is a profound loss. That angelic voice was extinguished, leaving a sad silence in the world of soul music. Eddie Kendrick's story once again rings a warning bell about protecting one's health against toxic habits. His physical body returned to dust, but his soaring crystal-clear falsetto notes will forever hover in the artistic sky, never to fall. Phyllis Hyman. Phyllis Hyman is a great icon of R&B. In smooth jazz, possessing a striking height, a sharp, proud beauty, and a deep, resonant mezzo-soprano voice, she was like a goddess whenever she stepped onto the stage or appeared in Broadway theater. Phyllis's love songs always carried the weight of life experience, a melancholic sadness that touched the deepest emotions of the listener. But behind that dazzling halo and incredibly confident demeanor, Phyllis Hyman was a profoundly fragile soul, always having to battle bipolar depression alone in an incredibly harsh industry. Let us analyze the cruelty of loneliness when standing at the peak of fame. For an artist carrying a sensitive soul, lacking a solid spiritual anchor, and society's ignorance of mental health at the time was a deep pit of despair. I believe that Phyllis Hyman used music not just to perform, but as a silent cry for help. She sang about love, separation, and pain with a rawness that cut into people's hearts, because those were the very agonies she was enduring every day. The energy depletion from constantly having to smile in public pushed her to the absolute limit of her endurance. On an afternoon in late June 1995, just hours before she was set to perform on stage in New York, Phyllis Hyman ended all her pain at the age of 45. To those who loved her melodies, this sudden passing leaves an indescribable ache. It was not just the loss of a talent, but our failure to listen to and embrace shattering souls. Phyllis Hyman's legacy will forever be tear-soaked love songs, reminding humanity of the importance of caring, sharing, and loving one another before internal storms sweep away the most precious things. Alvin Ailey. Alvin Ailey is a grand monument who completely changed the face of world contemporary dance. By founding the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, he honored the beauty, resilience, and profound cultural heritage of African Americans through the language of the body. His classic piece, Revelations, is an immortal masterpiece, carrying the power to heal the soul and praise the desire for freedom. Alvin's choreographic ability was the perfect combination of the grace of ballet, the rhythm of jazz, and the powerful spirit of gospel music. However, a man who spent his whole life honoring the beauty of the human body had to witness his own body being devastated by the vicious disease of the century. Through the historical and sociological lens of the 1980s, Alvin Ailey's tragedy carries a doubled pain. At that time, the HIV/AIDS epidemic was not only a medical death sentence, but also brought with it cruel stigma from society. I assess that Alvin's greatest agony was not only physical exhaustion, but the fact that he was forced to keep the secret of his illness until his eyes closed. To protect the reputation of the theater and the dancers he loved. Like his own children, the talented artist chose to bear the ultimate pain alone, without a single word of complaint to the media. In December 1989, the master of choreography took his last breath at the age of 58. For audiences passionate about the art of dance, his passing is a loss of historical proportions. Even though the severe illness took Alvin Ailey's life, in a heartbreaking silence, the legacy he left behind never stops moving. The dance steps he choreographed continue to be recreated every day by thousands of dancers worldwide, conveying the message of resilience and love. His story will forever be a guiding lighthouse, shattering all stigma so that true art may be crowned. Merlin Santana. To close this deeply reflective list, let us look back at the passing of Merlin Santana, a contemporary story that reflects the senseless harshness of the streets. Famous for his roles in The Steve Harvey Show and The Cosby Show, Merlin was one of the youngest, most handsome, and most promising actors on American television. Possessing a radiant smile, natural acting chops, and a wide-open future, he was the pride of his family and the ideal model for countless cinema-loving teenagers. That young man was step by step building solid bricks for an illustrious career. But alas, fate is sometimes an incredibly cruel scriptwriter. Let us analyze the senselessness of violence robbing us of priceless potential. Merlin's passing did not originate from illness, nor from the pressures of fame, but stemmed from a terrifying and completely absurd incident on the streets of Los Angeles. I believe that the greatest pain for his family and society is not just losing a good actor, but the fact that a young man at the age of 26, an age brimming with vitality and unfulfilled ambitions, had his life taken so unjustly. It strikes a heavy blow to our sense of safety, proving that street tragedies can strike at any moment, extinguishing the brightest of dreams. On a November night in 2002, the flight carrying Merlin Santana's youth was permanently grounded. For parents having to witness young talents, fall always brings an ache to the very core of the soul. Merlin departed, leaving behind unfinished roles and an unfillable void. His story closing this sorrowful list is an ironclad warning about the value of peace. It reminds us to cherish and protect young people, for all the glamour on stage becomes meaningless in the face of the extreme fragility of a human life. Closing this video, we hope the stories just shared have brought you moments of deep reflection on the priceless value of health, peace, and the true meaning of life behind the spotlight. We wish you always a relaxing, joyful, and warm time with your beloved family. Do not forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next meaningful videos from our memory vault. Goodbye and see you again.